Well, I think that's a good start. One of the person that I forgot to introduce is my co-chair, Eric Cantor. He said if I introduced him, he would be okay, and he wouldn't do anything in public that we'd all regret. So I am holding him to that promise. Calm down, Eric. My name's Dave Morrell. I also co-chair Government Affairs. So I appreciate the opportunity to moderate with this nice group of men here. First question we have. One of the biggest struggles, and this has to deal with deregulation. One of the biggest struggles facing small business owners is trying to keep up with increased government regulations. Large multinational corporations have a fleet of lawyers, tax accountants, and lobbyists to research. Find a lobbyist who will find them a loophole for any exemption. Small business struggles just to exist. What will you do, or have you done, to streamline or eliminate the endless burden of regulations making small businesses unable to compete with larger corporations?
One thing small businesses need is certainty. Not only is the problem with over-regulation and overburden, but the uncertainty that the Obama administration is bringing. He talks about more upcoming whether it was an uncontrolled EPA to OSHA standards, you name it. At the local level, the only thing I've done recently is we are working to streamline our development regulations here in Pierce County. We're taking like 800 pages of regulations and trying to cut them in half and make them more streamlined. That's one thing we're working on right now. But it comes down to we need an administration and we need a Congress that isn't trying to have one-size-fits-all. That's one of the problems with our federal government. They're trying to make a one-size-fits-all regulatory requirement for all United States. I think we need to devolve a lot of the rules and regulations down to the states. We can have an overarching set of policies at the federal level, but more and more of the regulations should be state by state, county by county, city by city. We need competition and sensible regulations.
And I'm sorry, is it 2 and 2 or 2 and 1 and 1? I forgot about that. So this is 2. No, I'm sorry. It's. Am I doing 2 minutes now, or just the 1 minute?
You're doing 2 minutes.
Okay, and it is in 1 minute. Like, first of all, I think that there's a balance involved. A lot of the regulations that are big problems for businesses are state and local, and are a major, major challenge. So I don't think you can leave it on just one government, one federal government. I'll also tell you that there are times when I know businesses come to me and say they want a federal standard so that they don't have to have 50 different sets of regulations, or if you go all the way down to the county and city level, you're in the hundreds or thousands of different sets of regulations that businesses have to do. So I don't think it's as simple as saying the federal government shouldn't be involved. In many instances, I think the federal government needs to set a ceiling so that businesses at least know what they're dealing with. I'll give you one example of something I have worked on. I'm a big supporter of the Disabilities Act that makes sure that people have equal access. But there is a bill out there that would allow businesses to have a window, a period of time, in which they could voluntarily comply with changes instead of being forced to comply with whatever the federal regulators do. I'm a supporter of that. And I've had people who are advocates on disability issues who come in and say, well, we don't want that, we want to have the hammer of the federal government. In my experience, if you work with businesses, a lot of the issues that we're concerned about can be resolved. Because here's the thing, the issues that are being regulated are kind of important. It's important that people with disabilities have access to businesses. It's important that businesses don't dump pollutants into the water so that Puget Sound dies on us. But the key is to do it in a cooperative fashion. And you can talk to any chamber in this district. I have a great working relationship with every single one of them. I make it a top priority to get out there and work directly with local businesses so I understand what their concerns are, so that my staff understands what their concerns are, and we help them in every way we can. And yes, I think we need to streamline regulations on every single level of government. I'll be very happy to continue to fight for that.
Well, what we see coming down from the federal government and the Obama administration is just more regulation, more rules. The czars that they have down there, the proclamations they're making are not business friendly. And I think what we really need to do is, again, there is some arching where the federal government needs to get involved, but I just think you're seeing way too much federal oversight and federal regulation of the day-to-day lives of business people, big business and small business, the OSHA standards, the new EPA standards, the new pollution requirements that they keep ratcheting down. It's going to get to the point where we cannot compete here in this country. And I think when you get one big overarching federal government that's trying to control the lives of everybody down to the state and local level, that becomes problematic. It's one thing to have standardized requirements for manufacturing to go across state lines, but some of these new EPA regulations are just onerous at best. Thank you.
That's it.
Okay, the second question is listed here as the $50 million question. $50 billion question. I don't think millions really apply anymore in federal government.
It's got me on the edge of my seat at this point.
When the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act passed, allocating $700 billion to the economic stimulus, we were told unemployment would not go higher than 8%. It is now 10%. This last summer was called the summer of recovery. GDP has seen only nominal growth since then. Last weekend, President Obama suggested a new $50 billion stimulus plan. One, do you support this new package? And two, if so, will the $50 billion succeed where the previous $700 billion fell short?
No, I don't support additional stimulus spending, but I think the biggest mistake that the Obama administration made is when their Council of Economic Advisors said that somehow unemployment would be kept at 8% no matter what we did. When you go back to 2008 and you remember what happened, and I actually studied very carefully what happened to our financial markets, we lost $16 trillion in value in our economy. Americans were borrowing, and this is privately held debt, at a ratio of $3 of privately held debt for every dollar of GDP. The traditional average is about $1.25 to $1.50. We had borrowed ourselves into an enormous hole. Then the housing bubble burst, people lost their values, there was no question that our economy was going down. And the economist who predicted that unemployment could be held at 8% should not have the job. And she actually doesn't have a job anymore. Council of Economic Advisors did finally let her go. So that was a ridiculous prediction. But let's look at the facts, okay? Our economy was contracting at a rate of 6% a quarter for over 9 months at that period of time. Since the stimulus has passed, we have had growth now, I think it's for 5 quarters in a row. Unemployment is 9.5%. We're actually now adding private sector jobs. And every independent economic analysis that is out there says that the stimulus saved or created over 3 million jobs. Would we really be better off without those 3 million jobs? I don't think so. Now, I took what was at the time a moderate position. There are many on the left who say we didn't spend enough. Should have spent $2 trillion. If you read Paul Krugman, that's what he says all the time. And I think he was just as wrong. Now, he was right about one thing. If we had spent $2 trillion, we'd be better off right now in terms of jobs, because you would have spent the money and created the jobs. But what he wasn't factoring in was the deficit, something that I care dearly about. Keep in mind, I voted for a balanced budget agreement that actually got us a balanced budget in 4 years. You have to care about the deficit. Spending money in the short term will help. We had to stop the economy from going over the edge. I believe that we did that. But we are going to have to slowly dig our way out of this. There's no government stimulus program, no magic wand out there that's going to suddenly get the unemployment rate down to 6 or 7%. We are starting to see private sector job growth. Ironically, a lot of the losses in jobs are now public sector. It's probably appropriate. We can't have a government-dependent economy. It's got to be private sector dependent. But going forward, we got out of the worst of it, 6% contraction. Can't keep spending, I don't believe. I think we do have to have fiscal responsibility. That's why I think we have to pay for whatever we pass at this point. And I've got the votes to prove that, but I'm way over time, so I'll stop. I'll save that for the rebuttal.